Las Vegas looks loud and bright on the surface, but the real story sits in the quiet places visitors never see. Every year, the city adds more charges to simple trips, and people assume it's just inflation or bad luck. It isn't. These fees exist because a hidden network built them, one by one inside offices far from the Strip. The people behind them don't deal cards or greet guests. They operate through policy, influence, and private agreements that reshape what visitors pay without ever telling them. When you start following the paper trail, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. It leads to the same rooms, the same names, and the same decisions that silently drain money from millions of travelers. Once you see it clearly, you realize Las Vegas isn't just expensive. It's engineered that way. Many travelers arrive thinking they found a bargain, only to watch the price climb as new charges appear on their bill. These fees feel scattered and random, but they follow a pattern shaped far from the casino floors. Most visitors believe the rising costs are just part of modern travel. They rarely consider that each small charge was placed there by design, crafted through meetings and paperwork that never reach the public's attention. The Strip's glow hides a network working far from the slot machines. These individuals understand how to move money without touching cards or chips, and they guide the rules that decide what every visitor pays. This system did not appear overnight. It grew from years of steady decisions, shaped by people who learned that changing one line in a document could create a new stream of money flowing into the city. The shift began when Las Vegas changed from a place run by risk-takers to a place controlled by large corporations. The new leaders wanted predictable income, and fees offered a steady path without relying on luck. Lobbyists stepped in, offering polished plans that promised growth for the city. Behind those plans were detailed strategies describing how to charge visitors without raising official prices, making every trip more profitable without visible backlash. Inside certain office buildings, representatives from major companies met with people who drafted laws. They discussed what guests could be charged for, shaping rules that would eventually spread across the entire tourism industry. Visitors checking into hotels never see these conversations. They only notice the extra line on the receipt, labeled with a name that sounds harmless. That line often came from months of planning between corporations and political advisors. Hotel staff know guests complain, yet they have no power to change anything. The real decisions are made far above them, inside conference rooms, where the focus is on long-term revenue rather than guest satisfaction. Resort fees became the foundation of this new system. They could be adjusted quietly, bringing in steady money without raising the listed room price. This made hotels appear affordable while still collecting a far higher total. Other fees followed. Parking, convenience, energy, and service charges were introduced slowly until they became part of the regular experience. Each fee added a small amount, but together they formed a large stream of income. The public questioned these charges, but the answers were usually vague. Few knew the real roots of the fees or how deeply the political system was tied to the hospitality industry shaping them. Lawmakers supported the changes because they were told the fees helped the city grow. They believed the fees would improve tourism, even though most visitors never understood what they were paying for. As fees grew, companies poured more resources into political influence. They wanted rules that protected their ability to charge more, and they built strong relationships with those writing and approving the laws. These alliances formed a structure that felt familiar, though it didn't resemble the old organized groups of Las Vegas's past. Instead, it was built on access, pressure, and long-term deals hidden behind paperwork. Regular travelers felt the impact without realizing why. They wondered how a cheap room cost so much, unaware that every added charge was part of a larger design running through the state's political system. The process continued because few questioned it deeply. People accepted the charges, believing they had no choice, giving the network even more freedom to shape prices however they wished. This new structure worked quietly, using influence instead of force. It relied on meetings instead of threats, and it grew stronger each year because it stayed out of public sight and avoided open confrontation. Some insiders began noticing how the lines on financial reports kept expanding. Fees became a larger portion of profits, proving that the strategy worked better than traditional casino games. Executives preferred this system because it involved less risk. Gamblers could win, but fees never lost. Each visitor became a guaranteed contributor, even if they never touched a slot machine. During major events, fees climbed even higher. Companies argued it was due to increased demand, but the structure behind these charges remained the same, approved through quiet agreements long before guests arrived. Even when guests pushed back, the system held strong. Adjustments were made only when necessary, designed to keep the income flowing without drawing too much attention or creating public anger. The people shaping these decisions rarely faced criticism because most visitors didn't know who they were. They stayed behind the scenes, guiding policies that shaped the city's entire financial model. Over time, this network gained more control than any individual casino. It did not rely on luck, personality, or pressure. It relied on access to the laws that allowed each fee to exist. This web of influence formed a new kind of power in Las Vegas. It acted quietly and benefited greatly, controlling revenue through decisions most travelers never witnessed, creating a modern system many began calling the New Vegas Mafia. The shift in power became clearer as more companies aligned themselves with the same political voices. They understood that influence offered more stability than any roulette wheel, and they worked together to shape rules that secured long-term financial control. Visitors noticed their bills rising each year, but the changes happened in small increments. These small steps were intentional, designed to avoid drawing attention while allowing the network behind the scenes to build a stronger flow of guaranteed money. Casinos advertised lower base prices to attract travelers, knowing the hidden charges would make up the difference. This strategy created an illusion of affordability, pulling people in before revealing the true cost tucked behind layers of additional fees. Some travelers tried switching hotels, hoping different locations would offer better deals. They discovered the same pattern everywhere because the same system shaped the entire city. No matter where they stayed, the structure behind the fees remained intact. Lobbyists continued guiding lawmakers with carefully crafted proposals. These documents presented fees as necessary improvements rather than added burdens, convincing officials that more charges helped maintain the city's growth and supported the industry's future stability. People inside the political system learned how deeply the hospitality industry depended on these added charges. They recognized that removing or limiting fees would disrupt a revenue stream that had grown too large for the city to ignore. The network behind the fees expanded its reach, connecting corporations, advisory groups, and policy writers into a single web. Each part worked together, strengthening the structure that controlled how tourists paid for nearly every aspect of their visit. During planning seasons, various groups met to adjust the financial models. These meetings examined market conditions, projected visitor numbers, and studied how new charges could be introduced without triggering strong reactions from travelers. Meanwhile, visitors continued exploring the Strip unaware of the system guiding their expenses. They enjoyed the lights, food, and shows, not realizing that every part of their experience had a fee attached, built from decisions made in distant offices. The network's strength came from its ability to operate quietly. It avoided public attention, letting the casinos take the visible criticism while the real engineers of the pricing system stayed tucked behind the political structure supporting them. When public pressure rose, the system responded with small adjustments. These changes helped calm frustration without disrupting the network's overall strategy. The fees stayed in place, and the revenue continued to grow steadily behind the scenes. Some analysts raised concerns about the growing dependence on fees, warning that the city's stability might weaken if travelers finally pushed back. Their warnings rarely reached the public, buried under reports favoring continued expansion. Corporations invested heavily in research to understand visitor behavior. They studied what travelers tolerated and where they hesitated, adjusting fee structures to stay within the boundaries most people accepted while still producing significant profits. This ongoing analysis allowed the network to evolve. It could shift fees from one category to another, rename charges, or bundle them together, all while keeping the revenue strong and avoiding major backlash from frustrated guests. Even local residents began to notice the growing influence. They saw how decisions about tourism and pricing rarely reflected community needs. Instead, they matched the interests of the powerful groups shaping policy deep within state buildings. Behind closed doors, the network refined its connections. Representatives built strong relationships with officials, offering support for campaigns, projects, and initiatives that aligned with their goals. These alliances strengthened the system holding the fees in place. Visitors heading to a show or restaurant had no idea how much planning went into determining what they would pay. The experience felt random, but it followed a carefully managed design built by years of coordinated influence. Even small additions, like water service fees or venue surcharges, came from these plans. Each fee served a purpose, adding a predictable contribution to the city's financial machine without raising obvious red flags for most travelers. The system grew powerful enough that casinos felt confident promoting low prices again. They understood that the added charges would cover any gap, creating an illusion that value remained while the network quietly strengthened its hold. This strategy kept Las Vegas attractive to newcomers while still earning record amounts from every trip. The balance between appearance and reality became a core part of the city's identity, maintained through consistent political influence. Lawmakers supported many of these changes because the revenue helped fund state programs. They saw the fees as dependable contributions, reinforcing the relationship between the industry and the political landscape managing it. However, some officials quietly questioned how much control the industry held. They noticed how policy discussions shifted toward protecting corporate interests rather than prioritizing fair costs for the millions visiting the city each year. Despite these concerns, the network remained untouched because no single group could challenge its influence. The fees were woven into the city's identity, supported by too many connections for any easy reform to occur. Visitors continued paying the rising charges because they believed they had no alternative. The network counted on this acceptance, trusting that travelers would continue returning as long as the city maintained its reputation for excitement and entertainment. This acceptance gave the network even more confidence, allowing it to explore new ways to charge guests. Each new idea passed through the same channels of influence, strengthening a system that resembled a modern version of organized control. The network's confidence grew as new reports showed fees bringing in more consistent income than many casino games. Executives studied the numbers closely, realizing they had built a model that produced steady gains regardless of how visitors spent their time. As profits increased, the network expanded its efforts, forming deeper connections with consultants who specialized in forecasting public reactions. These advisors helped refine how fees were introduced, ensuring visitors accepted changes without noticing the larger pattern forming around them. Corporate leaders recognized the strength of their position. They no longer needed bold announcements or large changes. Instead, they adjusted modest charges and allowed the political system supporting them to keep the revenue growing year after year. Behind closed doors, meetings focused on maintaining this stability. Officials and industry leaders discussed how to protect these income streams while avoiding regulatory attention that could disrupt their carefully built structure of small, reliable charges. Some workers within the industry wondered how far the system would go. They saw the steady rise in visitor frustration, but also understood that the entire city had become dependent on the growing list of additional charges. Travelers shared their experiences online, comparing notes about the increasing costs. Many felt confused, believing they had misread the original prices. Few realized their frustration connected directly to a growing network controlling the city from behind the scenes. The network monitored these discussions closely. They adjusted names, descriptions, and categories to make the fees sound more acceptable, knowing most travelers would continue paying as long as the charges seemed standard across the industry. Companies continued seeking ways to increase revenue without raising base rates. They explored creative methods, finding minor areas where small charges could be added without drawing major attention, strengthening the system's grip on the city's financial model. Lawmakers rarely questioned these additions because they were presented as minor updates supporting tourism growth. The network excelled at framing changes in positive language, helping the system expand while avoiding public pushback. Over time, travelers became used to the pattern. They expected extra charges even before their trip began. This normalization played directly into the network's advantage, allowing the fees to grow slowly without sparking widespread resistance. Despite the normalization, some visitors began keeping detailed records of what they were charged. They noticed how each year introduced a new line on their receipt, revealing how deeply the network's influence shaped every part of the city. These observations spread across travel forums, drawing attention from frequent visitors who followed Las Vegas closely. They recognized that the rising charges were not random, but reflected a long-term strategy built behind political doors. Corporate leaders knew this increased awareness could become a problem, but believed the network's influence was strong enough to withstand criticism. They trusted the relationships they had built within the state's political structure to protect their strategy. Advisors assured executives that most travelers would continue visiting. They explained that the city's entertainment value overshadowed frustration, creating a predictable balance that allowed the network to maintain its control with minimal adjustments. This belief strengthened their resolve, encouraging them to test new charges in slower seasons. These experiments helped them measure traveler reactions, revealing how much the public would tolerate before complaining or reconsidering their travel plans. As more data came in, the network developed a clearer understanding of visitor behavior. They used this insight to fine-tune fees across hotels, restaurants, and event spaces, ensuring the increases blended naturally with the city's overall pricing landscape. Behind the scenes, the network's growth began shifting power away from traditional casino operations. The old approach of relying on table games and slot machines faded as the fee-driven model became the city's most dependable source of income. Executives realized they could predict their revenue months in advance using fee structures. This level of control reshaped how companies planned expansions, investments, and long-term strategies, all tied directly to the flow of added charges visitors paid. Political figures enjoyed the benefits as well. Fee revenue strengthened state budgets, helping them promote achievements and secure support. This mutual benefit created a dependable cycle that kept the network stable and deeply rooted in local government. Some insiders quietly questioned whether the network had gained too much control. They saw how the city's identity had shifted and worried that travelers might eventually push back hard if the rising costs crossed their personal limits. Despite these concerns, the network continued advancing. They believed the entertainment value of Las Vegas outweighed the frustration. They trusted that visitors cared more about the experience than the fine print on their final receipt. The system's confidence grew, and discussions began about expanding fees into new areas. They explored charges connected to digital services, event participation, and upgraded experiences, each one designed to blend naturally with the modern travel environment. Every new idea followed the same path: corporate approval, advisory review, political alignment, and final implementation. This process ensured that even the smallest fee had powerful support behind it, securing its place within the city's financial ecosystem. Visitors kept paying because the city still offered excitement they struggled to find elsewhere. The network relied heavily on this emotional pull, understanding that the promise of fun overshadowed the annoyance of growing hidden charges. This created a landscape where the real power in Las Vegas no longer sat inside casinos, but inside offices, where policy and profit intertwined. The network behind the fees had become the quiet force steering the city's entire future. The network's plans expanded as they explored how technology could boost revenue. Digital check-ins, mobile services, and automated systems created new opportunities to add charges, each framed as a convenience while quietly strengthening the city's growing web of controlled fees. Companies studied how visitors used these digital tools. They recognized that people approved charges faster when presented through screens rather than face-to-face, giving the network another channel to introduce small costs without creating uncomfortable interactions at hotel desks. These digital methods allowed the network to refine its strategy. They tested new fees in limited areas, collected data, and adjusted their approach before rolling out changes citywide, ensuring each addition blended seamlessly with the visitor's overall experience. Travelers continued relying on promotions advertising low room rates. They felt relieved after finding what seemed like a bargain, unaware that the network counted on this excitement to overshadow the long list of charges waiting at the end of their stay. Inside corporate offices, leaders reviewed projections showing the long-term strength of this approach. They saw how predictable revenue streams insulated them from economic downturns and shifts in gambling trends, making the fee system even more essential. Executives discussed how to encourage lawmakers to maintain supportive regulations. They provided reports showing how the fees funded development, jobs, and public programs, reinforcing the idea that removing or limiting them would harm the city's economy. Political figures appreciated the stability the system offered. They saw steady returns that helped balance budgets, making them more likely to support policies that kept the fee structure intact despite growing concerns from visitors and consumer advocates. Consumer groups raised questions about transparency, noting how difficult it was for travelers to understand the true cost of a trip. Their concerns spread slowly, but the network believed its influence was strong enough to outlast the criticism. Some travelers began avoiding certain hotels after feeling misled by unexpected charges. Yet the network knew most visitors still returned because Las Vegas offered experiences they could not find anywhere else, giving the system confidence to continue expanding. As the years passed, the network refined its communication strategies. They used carefully crafted language to justify new charges, framing each one as necessary for maintaining quality, improving facilities, or supporting local initiatives tied to tourism growth. Behind the scenes, executives monitored market trends and prepared for shifts in public expectations. They knew they had to adapt quickly if travelers reached their limit, but the fee system remained flexible enough to withstand changing conditions. City planners noticed how deeply revenue from fees shaped local decisions. Infrastructure, advertising campaigns, and new projects relied on money generated from these charges, binding the city's future to the network's continued control. The network rarely needed direct communication with the public. Its work happened through political decisions, corporate structures, and strategic planning. Visitors felt the effects without knowing who made the decisions that influenced every part of their bill. Many tourists shrugged off the added costs, believing every major city had similar fees. This mindset worked perfectly for the network, allowing them to adjust pricing in ways that avoided overwhelming backlash while maintaining strong financial gains. Inside the system, leaders recognized they had created a model unlike anything in the city's past. It didn't rely on traditional power or old methods of control. It operated quietly, supported by influence, relationships, and a deep understanding of policy. Some insiders compared this structure to a modern version of organized control. There were no threats or intimidation, yet the network held a level of influence that shaped the daily experiences of millions visiting Las Vegas each year. Executives believed transparency was unnecessary, as long as the city delivered entertainment and excitement. They trusted the emotional pull of Las Vegas to outweigh any frustration caused by rising charges, keeping visitors coming back again and again. Meanwhile, lawmakers continued approving policies that favored the system. They argued that strong tourism supported everyone, allowing the network to grow even deeper roots within the political framework guiding the city's financial direction. Travelers planning their trips saw advertisements for affordable rooms and exciting events. They felt encouraged, unaware of the growing influence controlling their final bill, and the network knew this excitement remained its strongest shield. As more data came in, the network developed models predicting exactly how much a typical visitor would spend through fees alone. These projections help shape budgets, expansion plans, and long-term corporate strategies for the city's biggest companies. Despite concerns among a small group of analysts, the network's influence continued to expand. Its reach extended across hotels, entertainment venues, and city projects, creating a cycle that reinforced its control with every new policy or charge. Visitors rarely thought about the system shaping their expenses. They focused on shows, food, and memories, unaware that every part of their journey was influenced by people they would never see, working from buildings far from the bright neon glow. The network recognized how powerful invisibility could be. Without public attention, they could adjust revenue models, refine fee structures, and guide legislation without facing serious opposition, giving them a level of control no casino boss ever held. This quiet control formed the backbone of modern Las Vegas. The city thrived on entertainment, but its true stability came from the calculated fees designed and protected by a structure that operated far beyond the reach of tourists' daily experiences. In time, many people began referring to this structure as the new Vegas Mafia, not because it resembled the past, but because it held power through influence, connections, and a steady flow of money built from charges most visitors never questioned.